Bonjour tout le monde. My name is Bernadette Clément, and I'm co-hosting Liberal Live, the online edition of this convention, and I'm co-hosting with François-Philippe.
Merci.
We have a terrific guest with us today, Premier Kathleen Wynne, Premier of Ontario. Welcome.
Welcome on the show.
Merci
Great to have you.
beaucoup.
Now,
Great to
welcome
be
to
here.
Montreal.
It's great to be here.
Did you take your customary run outside today?
I ran up Montreal.
Ah,
Really?
c'est beau, hein?
Wow.
It was very icy.
Hope you don't fall. We have the mayor here.
No, I did not fall. It was beautiful, though. It was just, and there were lots of people running, and there were people skiing, and dogs, and it was, Jane and I went up the mountain, and it was fantastic.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well,
And people doing stair training, like lots of people going up and down the stairs, and they weren't so icy. So it was just beautiful. It's wonderful to be here. Merci.
C'est un plaisir de vous avoir avec nous à Montréal.
Now, we had a terrific panel, provincial leaders panel earlier, and the room was very receptive and very warmly welcomed you as well, so that's great. And some of what you said was about needing a more collaborative partner in the federal government, and that leads to a lack of coherence. Can you elaborate on that and explain what it is you want to see with our federal government?
It seems to me, and I've had the opportunity as the chair of the Council of the Federation of the Premiers to see the kinds of projects that we could work together on. So whether it's retirement security or whether it's investment in infrastructure, to have a federal government that sees those as projects where we could find common ground and we could have a strategy going forward, I think would just make the country so strong. And you know, in the past we've had some examples. I used the example of the Kelowna Accord. I used the example of childcare. There was a point in this country where we had a new deal for cities in place, and so that kind of collaboration, talking to the provinces up front, developing policy. The Canada Jobs Grant discussion that's going on right now is a discussion where the provinces are trying to push the federal government to come up with a policy that works, instead of the federal government up front having a discussion with the provinces, coming up with a policy that works, and then putting it in place. So that's what I mean by coherence and a strengthened confederation.
And what are you looking at in Ontario in particular? I know that you mentioned pensions quickly. Can you elaborate on that? Because that's going to focus.
Yeah, one of the big issues for us in Ontario is to have a federal partner on infrastructure investment. You know, I used the example of the Ring of Fire. So the infrastructure that's needed to develop that Northern Ontario economic opportunity. So I think that having a national strategy around infrastructure that would include investment in economic opportunities like the Ring of Fire and transit, quite frankly, because if you think about, you think about Montreal. Southern Ontario, Montreal, different parts of the urban centers across Canada, infrastructure is a huge issue. Aging infrastructure is a huge issue. So needing a federal partner on those kinds of things. I think that having a national partner and a strategy on affordable housing going forward, you know, I think that that's an issue that there has been some funding. To be fair, there has been some funding that we've been able to work in partnership with the federal government. But there's not a strategy. There's not a strategy that says, this is the 10-year plan, and you know, this is how we all fit into it.
We need to think long term, and what you were saying basically, and I'm sure our viewers coast to coast in Canada are saying, you want to start a national dialogue, something that you said has been missing for some time in Canada, and what would be a framework for that? You know, starting a national dialogue with the other premiers to address these important issues for Canadians? Well,
I think we have a framework. You know, we have the Council of the Federation of Canada's Premiers. Sure. I'm the chair this year. It will go to Robert Giz of PEI next year. But we have all the territories and all of the provinces at the table. And when I first became the chair, I said, will Stephen Harper come? Will the Prime Minister come? And he would not. And so it is a lost opportunity from my perspective.
For all Canadians.
Exactly.
Because one other thing we heard from other panelists, if we want to build the economy of tomorrow and inclusive growth, you know, we talked about that, was the fact of talking about natural resources as well, you know, having a more cohesive approach to natural resources in Canada. How can you see that from an Ontario perspective?
Well, again, I think that we first of all have to have a relationship and a willingness to engage on the discussion. So right now at the Council of the Federation of the Premiers, there are discussions about healthcare, there are discussions about energy, national energy discussions. And so I think that we could introduce that kind of issue to the table. Sure. Right? And when I talk about the Ring of Fire, I'm talking about natural resources. I'm talking about economic opportunity in our natural resources, and I think it would be so worthwhile to have a discussion about where are those opportunities in Canada? What are the priorities? How are we all going to benefit from investment? In the same way that the federal government has invested in the oil sands in Alberta, we could see investment in some of those other opportunities.
Now, something you said is that Canadians are longing for vision and nation building. Do you sense that? Are those the conversations you're having with Ontarians?
I think that what happens is when there is not that vision, when there is no opportunity for people to feel optimistic and to kind of hold on to what that national vision is, then the discussion deteriorates into negativity and it becomes smaller. Bob Ray said, that it really, nation building is not about making the country smaller and making our vision smaller. It's about expanding our vision and strengthening across the country rather than just looking out for ourselves. And that, it's almost in the absence of the national discussion, the national vision, we revert to that very narrow self-interest, and I don't think that's in the best interest of the country.
This conference or convention kicked off with a conversation between Chrystia Freeland and Larry Summers, who was economic advisor to Bill Clinton and to currently President Obama. And he talked about the public investment as important to economic growth. And we're in a context now where people are sort of saying the government should, in Canada anyway, should pull back from spending. Yeah. How do you feel about that?
I believe the opposite. Okay. I believe that at this point in our history, this is the time we need to invest. We're in the midst of a fragile recovery, and I think that those investments, whether it's in training and skills development, we have a youth employment strategy that we put in place, $295 million. Already 7,600 young people have placements and are getting exposed to a career. We need to invest in infrastructure. We can't pull back and just say to communities, well, you just go it alone. That's not responsible. There still needs to be that support. So I completely disagree with the notion that pulling back is what should be done.
And there is probably a role between the municipal government, the provincial, and the federal. Larry Summers was saying, talking about cities as center of excellence within our country. To build the ecosystem you need to succeed in the 21st century. I'm sure that's something that's dear to you as well.
So let me give you an example. Right now in Ontario, we are in the process of uploading, taking back costs that were imposed on the municipal governments by the former government, the former Conservative government in Ontario, the Mike Harris government. So we're taking those costs back, and that is our way of supporting the municipal governments and giving them the opportunity to build and to do their economic development. So it's that kind of arrangement. Now, it might not be exactly the same thing with the federal government, but the way we are working with municipalities, the other thing is my government, my Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing meets every month with the Association of Municipalities in Ontario.
Key. That is key.
So that relationship is there because there's an ongoing dialogue. We don't have that with the federal government.
And you were Minister of Municipal Affairs.
I was Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, and I met with those leaders every week. So you get to know each other, and you get to know what the concerns are, and as issues arise, as we bring legislation, as they have a concern, we know about those things in advance, and that's needed at the federal level.
Well, it was striking this morning to see all of you on the panel and talking and engaging with each other. It was refreshing because, you could see the engagement and the desire to engage, and we all wish it would continue. I'm sure from your perspective, this is the best way we could work together.
I love that you say that and that you saw that, because when I was at the council in the summer, I said to my colleagues, if the people of Canada could see all of us meeting, it would warm their hearts, it would make them feel confident about the future, and so we need to show people more of that.
Sure.
And is that the way that the conversation looks when you meet?
It's very good.
So we had a preview, that's good.
It's very relaxed and it's very positive, and you know, when all of us meet, we're not all of the same party.
Sure.
So, but everybody has the interests of Canadians at heart, and we all know that our constituents are Canadians. You know, they're not just Ontarians or Albertans, or so it's very, very encouraging.
Now, you had a successful leadership race just a year ago now.
Just over a year ago.
Just right after, Justin Trudeau came in right after. And how has it been for this first year for you?
It's been such a huge honor. And
go on.
It's been such a huge honor. It's been very exciting and very challenging. And I'm going to continue to try to make our minority parliament work.
Madam Premier, thank you very much.
Nous allons aller vers le... Merci d'être avec nous. Merci.